What's up, everybody? I'm Josh Biddick, and I am back with Kind of Funny Weekly Review. As you may or may not have noticed, I was gone for a little bit. I took a bit of a break with the show, but I'm back. We're going to be fresh. I'm going to revamp it a little bit. So instead of doing Kind of Funny games and Kind of Funny, I'm just going to be covering the content that comes out of youtube.com/kindoffunny. I think this will be a little bit easier for me to maintain a consistent schedule. It'll also be easier for you to digest because the video will be shorter. Maybe in the future, I'll go back to doing one specifically for Kind of Funny games as well as Kind of Funny. But right now, we're going to do just this. So like I said, I can be consistent. It does potentially open up opportunities for you somewhere out there to do Kind of Funny games and review. If you want to, that'd be awesome. I'd love to help out, collaborate if we can, or if not, just do your own thing. I think that'd be really special, and I'd love to see what you have to do. Other than that, I'm really excited to be back. We've got a great show for you as always. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to be done rambling, and let's get started with the show. All right, Monday starts off with the show We Have Cool Friends. This week it's hosted by Greg Miller, joined by Anthony Rapp. Now this interview pretty much goes over Anthony's whole career, a lot of different things. We get to learn about him, which is really, really cool. And as anyone knows, Greg is a wonderful interviewer. They start off about Anthony's time in Rent, which leads into a discussion about a book he wrote, Without You, the memoir about his life-changing experiences of grief, loss, and joy. The writing of this book was actually fueled by the loss of his mother when he was only 25. That goes into a discussion about battles with cancer. Anthony talks about his experiences with his mother's battle, and as any best friend knows, Greg can really relate to battles with cancer due to his own battle he faced. Anthony continues the interview by discussing his first experiences with acting as the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz. Since then, he fell in love with acting. He started on Broadway theater, and then they moved to a transitional period where he was doing some film and television work. He briefly touches on how his siblings dealt with his career when he was a child. Towards the end of the interview, we have the segment Friend Zone, where you best friends can write in on Patreon your questions for our cool friends. Nick came in having tons of questions to ask as he's a huge fan of Star Trek Discovery. Though a question I want to highlight comes from Patreon user Casey, who wants to know who's Anthony's favorite Bloodborne boss to fight. Now this wraps up We Have Cool Friends, and with it Monday. Time to move on over to Tuesday. Tuesday brings us more Kind of Funny in review. The topic of discussion this week will be Toy Story 3. Hosts for the episode are Tim, Belinda, Andy, Greg, and Nick. And we see the return of Tim's eye this week. If you missed it last week, he had some crazy eye issue, but he is back as a two-eyed man. The show opens with Tim dropping some toy box trivia, and after that we move right along to the recap by Nick. And of course, with Nick recapping, it is ripe with masturbation jokes. Now, I'm not gonna lie, when we get to the end of the recap, I did get a little choked up thinking about it. Toy Story is one of my favorite movies, franchises of all time, and that ending is really, really powerful. Not only the whole toy suicide kind of deal, plus Andy saying goodbye to his toys and his childhood. Really powerful stuff. If you haven't seen it, there's a spoiler, but it's an old movie and you should check it out, and everyone loves Toy Story. Now that the recap's over, it's time for some haikus in review. I'm gonna highlight Ignacio Rojas, who says, "What a great send-off. I'm not crying, you're crying. Fuck it, I'm crying." Now it's time for everyone's favorite podcast within a podcast, Ragu Bagu, where rad guys talk bad guys. And our rad guys this week are trying to find the place of Lotso the bear. After discussion, we see that Lotso is going to be at position number 1, followed by number 2, the prospector / Al from Toy Story 2, and then number 3 comes over Sid, Potato Head, and Woody from Toy Story 1. After much debate, we have a new ranking for the Toy Story franchise. Number 1 is Toy Story 3, number 2 is Toy Story 2, and number 3 is Toy Story 1. Next week, we're going to finish this round of in review with Toy Story 4, and we will have the definitive final list of the Toy Story franchise ranking. Tuesday's all finished up. Now we're going to go over to Wednesday and check in on the best show on the internet, KFAF. The self-proclaimed best show on the internet is back, and Andy and Nick are at the helm. Starting the show, the boys pimp out kindafunny.com/store for some sweet new shirts. And on Friday the 28th, Nick will be at a free showing of Waiting for the Punchline. So stay tuned on his Instagram for more information. With housekeeping out of the way, it's time for some Warbo. Andy misses his shot as well as Nick. The Photoshop challenge this week is to do a Where's Waldo with the Kinda Funny crew. Next week's Photoshop challenge will be Andy's Tinder profile pictures. We're trying to get our sweet little Andy some love, so do your best. Now it's time for the big task of the show, the Blind Oreo Taste Test Challenge. Greg is tasked to guess Oreo flavors simply by eating them, and it wouldn't be KFAF if there wasn't a blindfold involved. Now, if Greg can get at least 7 out of 10, the boys state that they will not say anything negative and promote Games Daily for 1 week. If Greg loses, he has to tweet something positive about KFAF and how it's the best show on the internet. In an immaculate display of sense and Oreo mastery, Greg goes 10 for 10 and proves that he is an Oreo savant. Rounding out the show, we have Ask Andy Anything, where normally no real answers are given, but this time, Andy answers Pedro Venegas' question about how Andy does his hair. It's very in-depth, but after that, it was all downhill. Another Wednesday is in the bag, so let's head over for Thursday to take a casual scroll with the Internet Explorers. The show opens with the return of Tim Gettys from his E3 adventures, and he is joined by his lovely assistant, Nick Scarpino, and we're in for a wild ride. Now, the show starts off by the two talking about the thumbnails they use for their videos, and how well the video does based on how sexy the image is, or if the word porn is mentioned in the title. Then they move on to housekeeping, which again pimps out the kindafunny.com/store. Now we move into In Other News. First, we talk about an alligator swimming around Texas with a knife in his head. With more alligator news, they show a picture of Brian Altano and Max Scoville playing Nintendo Switch in the water while an alligator swims around them. Now somehow we dive down a rabbit hole of Sonic the Hedgehog, and with that, inflation fantasies? I don't really know a whole lot about it, don't really want to get into it. At the end of the day, do you, whatever floats your boat, just don't hurt other people. Then they rehash the news from last week about John Cena joining the cast of Fast and Furious 9, which finishes up In Other News and brings us to Tim wants to show Nick stuff. First, Tim shows Nick a bus full of puppies, followed by friend of the show Devin Sawa working out, and after much discussion, Tim shows Nick a video of a man shooting boiling water from a squirt gun in below freezing temperatures. Then we get a new look at some of the brand new Toy Story toys, and Tim tells everyone about the newest installment of the Bootleg Universe, which is Adi Shankar's take on your favorite childhood show. Spoiler alert, it's very dark. You may know the Bootleg Universe from the Power/Rangers he did a few years back. Really violent, really intense. You also might know Adi Shankar's work. He did the Castlevania series that's out on Netflix. So this Pokemon thing looks really intense. I don't know if this is just a concept trailer or if it's actually going to be like a short thing like the Power/Rangers was. But if you have any interest at all, check it out. Again, really dark, really graphic, but really, really cool. Now after an ad read, we have some breaking news from the chat that Fran is singing Old Town Road. At the same time, we see the Facebook algorithm shirt, which is a Star Wars and Harry Potter mashup. Now once everyone regains breath from laughing at Fran, they move on to fun clips and wrap up the show. Now that's all for Thursday. It's time to finish up the week with Friday. Starting off Friday, we have another episode of Screencast. Hosts this week are Kevin, Tim, and Joey. Starting off, the gang talks about what they watched this last week. Joey watched Shaft, Murder Mystery, and The Bachelor. Tim watched The Last Black Man in San Francisco, as well as The Bachelor. Kevin watched Murder Mystery and the first episode of the latest season of Black Mirror. Now the gang's talking about some entertainment news. The stories that are covered are the details of Ridley Scott's Gladiator sequel, that the Joker movie will be rated R, the Kingsman prequel had a title announcement of The King's Man, Queer Eye Season 4 will be coming out July 19th, and Season 5 has already been ordered. Kevin Feige wants Keanu Reeves in the MCU, and Marvel will be at San Diego Comic-Con in Hall H, so we're expecting some maybe Phase 4 announcements, or at least what we could see in the future of the MCU. Hulu is making an original content push now that Disney is in charge, and the last story is that Avengers Endgame will be coming out with some deleted scenes. This wraps up the news, and we're going to move right into trailer talk. The trailers that were covered this week are Escape Plan, The Extractors, The Boys, and Ready or Not. That wraps up trailer talk and moves on to This Week in Bronze, where Bronze Patreon members were asked to write in with the book series they want to be turned into a show or movie. I'm highlighting Wisemark, who throws out Eragon to be made into a movie. This one hits close to home because I'm actually rereading the series right now. It's my favorite book series, and the movie that came out did not do it justice at all. I think it would be really cool to be turned into maybe like an HBO show so they can really flesh it out. The whole story's out right now, so we won't run into a Game of Thrones issue where the people can't really adapt and they have to finish the series and don't really do it what the fans like, yada yada yada. I think Eragon would be great. Kevin finishes reading out the list of new content that's coming to streaming services and moves on to the big topic of the show, which is Toy Story 4. Now by the time this episode comes out, I haven't actually seen Toy Story 4, so I can't really give you a whole recap on what they talked about. If you've seen it, definitely go check out Screencast. You can listen to what they thought, and of course it'll be covered again next week in Toy Story in Review. So that wraps up for the Kinda Funny Screencast. We're going to be moving on over to the Kinda Funny Podcast. Kinda Funny Podcast is great. Intro comes in, but we don't actually hear the start of the show until 29 minutes into the podcast. A lot of rambling. The guys are really excited because Greg and Tim have just come back from their E3 adventures extravaganzas, so it's nice to have everyone back in the studio. Tim talks about what he liked about the Easy Alley studio, and the biggest thing was that they had air conditioning. Tim talks about his views on stores closing in San Francisco, kind of gentrification, and then that moves into the living expenses about San Francisco. Personally, I thought this was really cool because as someone in the media field, a lot of people move out to San Francisco. It's really big for tech, game design, media, and it can be kind of intimidating to move to that place. A lot of articles online say that you need to be making $100,000 at least to live above the poverty line. So kind of hearing what the locals say about living, how expensive it is, what you can actually do was kind of helpful. So if you have any idea or interest in moving to San Francisco, highly checking out this part of the podcast. Andy then starts talking about how he's been watching a lot of ray tracing videos, basically seeing like what Minecraft looks like with ray tracing and what he thinks it will do to gaming in the future. And then the show is rounded out with some light After Effects and Photoshop talk. That wraps up the Kinda Funny podcast, and with it, this week's worth of Kinda Funny content. Well, everyone, that's been another episode of Kinda Funny Weekly Review. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have some time, go over to youtube.com/kindafunny or youtube.com/kindafunnygames and throw in them a subscription. Anything you can do definitely helps out. Don't forget you can follow everyone on Twitter. I will make sure to have links to everything down there in the description. If you like Kinda Funny Weekly Review, make sure you give me a subscribe, a like, a notification bell ring. That way you know when they're coming. That would be hugely helpful. If there's things you want to see or segments you want added, let me know in the comment section. I'd love to kind of tailor the show to whatever you, the viewers, want to see. Also, before you go, don't forget to check out patreon.com/kindafunny or patreon.com/kindafunnygames. Anything you can do to support definitely helps Kinda Funny in the long run, which helps us see new content. Even if it's $1,